Hi, this is Robin Schultz, and my proposed dissertation title is The Social Impact of an Inclusive Elementary School Dance Program. As far as the background of the problem, IDEA really has helped pave the way for students with disabilities to attend their public schools with their typical peers. However, social inclusion has been more difficult to achieve, with students with disabilities reporting overall decreased levels of feelings of belonging in their schools and decreased rates of peer acceptance. This may be attributed to lack of participation in extracurricular activities and even less participation in classroom-based activities, specifically with the group of students with complex communication needs. So the rationale and significance of this study is that social participation in extracurricular activities has an impact on social acceptance of students with disabilities. So social interventions have the biggest impact on increasing social acceptance. We know that when students are motivated and having fun, they're more likely to develop friendships, relationships, and have positive interactions. Additionally, research shows that reverse inclusion models can provide for a familiar environment, staffing, and accommodations and structure for our students with disabilities. And inclusive dance in particular can additionally provide opportunities for expression and to feel an equal member of the team that don't exist in the traditional academic classroom. So the purpose of the study is to evaluate the impact of an existing inclusive dance program on peer acceptance of and relationships with students with complex communication needs. And hopefully the data from the study can be useful for determining if this model provides social benefits that are not obtained in the general education classroom. So the We Dance Together program is the program that will be used for this study. It is a reverse inclusion program, and students receive extra time to learn the class, faded adult supports, and visual cues and sign language throughout. The contact hypothesis says that we can reduce bias between groups by engaging in meaningful contact, and this will be the framework for the study. The 4 facilitating conditions for contact include equal status, common goals, intergroup cooperation, and authoritative support. So there are 2 research questions. Number 1, how do peers characterize their relationships with elementary school students with CCN before and after participation in a 6-week inclusive dance class? And 2, how does the participation impact peer acceptance of students with CCN? For the purpose of the study, students with CCN exhibit limitations in speech or language that have a significant impact on their ability to verbally communicate, and they use some type of AAC system to supplement that communication. An inclusive classroom is one in which all members have equal status, work towards a collaborative and common goal, and are supported by educators who model positive acceptance towards each of them. And those are those 4 facilitating components for the contact hypothesis. A brief look at the literature review indicates that students with disabilities do generally exhibit a lower sense of belonging than their typical peers, and it's been difficult to use the students with disabilities' self-perception of their peers' acceptance just based on communication and cognitive challenges. In general, peer acceptance of students with disability rates do differ across the disability type and the behavioral presentation. With students who otherwise appear typical and have behaviors exhibiting lower rates of acceptance than those who have a more obvious disability, in which students perceive they don't have control over their behaviors. Looking at the social participation of students with complex communication needs specifically, Chung et al. In 2012 found that typical students had multiple opportunities to communicate with each other throughout their school day, but students with disabilities were not always available for those opportunities. Raghavendra et al. In 2012 specifically looked at students with CCN when compared to other disability categories and also their typically developing peers, and found that these students had the lowest rate of time spent doing the same thing as peers, the lowest mean number of acquaintances and friends, and engaged in fewer activities than the other subgroups. So planned interventions have been investigated in the general education classroom. with not significant changes noted using just education approaches alone, such as book studies regarding people with disabilities. There has been more success with planned social intervention programs, and specifically Batchelor and Taylor in 2005 saw that students demonstrate a very significant increase in social acceptance of someone with a disability following an embedded program in the kindergarten classroom. Outside of general education, planned interventions include adapted PE classes, and Schoger in 2006 investigated an existing program called the Reverse Inclusion Program. And the results of the study showed that students reported at an increased rate that they could be friends with someone who looked or acted differently from them following participation in the program, and that students were noted to seek peers with disabilities more frequently at school. Emphasis for this program was placed on equal status and not on a helper or buddy system. Themes that have emerged studying the impact of dance education in schools have been choice, freedom, everyone can dance, there's no one truth about dance, every dance idea matters, and the major theme of peer acceptance, which Zeitomer 2016 attributed to more opportunity for leadership and social interaction. Looking at dance as a planned intervention, Zeitomer and Reed in 2011 investigated an integrated dance program at a YMCA and identified a major theme of students, typically developing students, towards the peers with disabilities as competence following participation in the program. The authors did make some attempts to incorporate the contact hypothesis into their study. However, there were no specifics in their printed article. Consiglio et al. In 2015 did look at the contact hypothesis in schools, and they found that students with sustained contact with the outgroup, which was those students with disabilities, did demonstrate a significant preference for having those students, as friends and classmates when compared to a no contact group. They also attributed more positive attributes to members of the disability community. So indications for this study include recommendations to investigate changes in peer perception based on participation in integrated dance, investigating peer acceptance of a variety of disability types, looking at friendship and inclusion in play that seems to be missing from our general education classrooms, looking specifically at increased access to activities and interaction opportunities for students with CCN, and looking at reverse inclusion programming to help facilitate communication and to prioritize inclusion. Okay, for methodology. There we go. This will be a mixed method, single case study to examine the social impact of the We Dance Together program using the contact hypothesis as a framework. Participants will come from an elementary school in a small urban school district, and this school does have a continuum of placements for students with special education needs. And what that means is that some students are in general education at least 80% of their day, with or without support. Some students are in resource rooms for half the day, and some students spend most of their time in a life skills classroom and are outside of the class less than 20% of the time in general education. 5 students with complex communication needs will participate in a dance program for 6 weeks prior to the study. They will represent that continuum of placements and use some type of AAC, primary or secondary. The treatment group will be up to 5 typically developing peers from those students' grade levels, and they will participate for the next 6 weeks. An interest survey will be used to identify the treatment group. These will be from the students with communication needs from their general education classroom, and they will be selected based on having the highest points on the interest survey, being gender matched to the student with CCN, having consent and assent on file, and teacher approval to miss class time. There will be 2 control groups. One will be with contact, and that will be students within that same general education classroom but not participating in the dance program. And then the other group will be without contact, and those are students from the same grade level who are not in class with students with CCN. Ethical considerations included the privacy of the dance students, the privacy of students completing peer nomination forms, and making equal status a priority. So names will be withheld from any questions. All generic photos and terms will be used to describe those with CCN. Students filling out nomination forms will do so using numbers rather than their names. And the interest survey will help to avoid teachers picking out buddies or helpers to participate in the program. Here are the research questions and how they will be addressed in the study. The first instrument is the peer nomination form, and students will choose from a class roster up to 5 people that they would nominate in a variety of categories, including who are your best friends and who would you like to help in your classroom. Each time a student is named in the categories of best friend, like to play with, or would like to invite over to my house, they will receive 1 point towards their peer acceptance score. The scores will be divided between the 2 groups, those with CCN and those without, and a mean will be established for each group. Paired dependent t-tests will be used to compare the acceptance rates of the students with CCN before and after the 6 weeks to investigate the impact of contact. So that will be done within the treatment group, within the control group, and within the combined groups. And that's to determine if there's an impact based on casual contact in the classroom or potentially with more planned contact in the dance program. Independent t-tests will be run between groups with contact and in the treatment group prior to the dance series to determine if there was some differences due to randomization before treatment began, and then following to see if there is a significant difference between the groups. Additionally, with peer nomination, the categories of who you would like to learn more about and who you'd like to help will help to identify how peers characterize the relationships with students with CCN. Favorability surveys will be given to all grade level peers. These will help to demonstrate general feelings towards students with CCN and or other disabilities. Paired dependent t-tests will be used to compare mean favorability scores before and after the 6-week time period within each group. And then ANOVA will be used to compare between the 3 groups. And this is really to see is there a difference between having no contact, having casual classroom contact, and having intentional structured contact. Semi-structured individual interviews will be conducted with the treatment group students, and this will be a series of questions about dance in general, characterizing a best friend, and then characterizing someone with CCN. This is a qualitative part of the study, and the information will be audio recorded and transcribed, and coding will be used to identify themes regarding peer characterization of their relationship with students with CCN before and after the treatment. The final instrument is a preferred interaction scale, and these are the photos that will be presented to students with a little blurb about what kind of student we are looking at. And the students will be asked a series of questions that begin with, is this someone you would invite over to play, sit with at lunch, etc. Students will point to and or say their answer using the peer response or the student response form. And then this will be scored per interaction type. Pair-dependent t-tests will be used to compare the mean interaction preference score for each activity type before and after participation. And this information will also be useful to help characterize how peers characterize their relationships with students with CCN. Okay, I have some information here regarding how consent will be obtained and the timeline for obtaining student assent and when all of the forms and interviews will be conducted and completed. Assumptions regarding the study is that students may be fickle regarding their best friend at these grade levels, but that they will be honest at the time of reporting. I would anticipate teachers not intentionally pair dancers for any extra opportunities in the classroom. And students do have varying degrees of language and spelling needs, and so those will be addressed. Triangulation will be used through multiple sources of data for each research question to ensure trustworthiness. And a pilot study was conducted that led to some changes in the instrument design. And this is just some information on the pilot study and the formal report that was made regarding that study to our funding source.